Hey guys! So today we're going to be drawing macaroons with soft pastels. I have prepared my paper. This is Canson Mi Teintes. It's the smooth side and it's the one of the beige colors, the light beige color, because basically depending on the object that you are drawing, you have to choose an appropriate color for for your subject. I taped it down. You can't see it, the camera doesn't take so wide, but I taped it down so it doesn't move. And now I will show you the pastels that I will be using for our macaroons and raspberries. So I'm using a pastel pencil. You can use any pastel pencil. This is actually, this is Faber-Castell, and I will be using this pencil for sketching out the macaroons. Then I will start with the colors for my macaroons. So it's not definitive. I might end up using some more colors in these, but it's just the main colors that I chose for my macaroons in the beginning. So let's swatch them out. So for my lights, I will be using yellows. Even though the macaroons are pink, I want my lights to be warm. And into the shadows, we will go into the cool tones. So then I will be going into pinks, so kind of a dusty pink. Next, I will take a cooler pink, a darker cooler pink, and purples as our cooler tones for the shadows. So this is going to give it more color. For highlights, I will be using another kind of pink. So this is a dustier pink. These are going to be the reflected lights on the shadow side. Then what else we will need is our raspberries. So for the raspberries, I will be using reds mostly, but I will be also using violet from the selection of our pastels for macaroons. So the main color of my raspberries is going to be this kind of warm red. It's going to go into the darker, cooler reds, as you can see here, and in some places where we can see the shadow near the edge of the table. So basically this is going to go all the way into the violet, and I'm using another violet, not the one that we had here. So the dark one is the same one as we use for macaroons, but this is going to be the reflected light on our raspberries. And I will be using the same pink that I have in my macaroons for highlights. So these are the highlights. It's possible that we might need something even lighter for the highlights, something like this. We can also use a bit of yellow in there, the same one that we used for the macaroons. And the last part is the leaves of mint, and my lightest parts will be yellow-green, and we will go through into a darker green. At the same time, we will make it cool, and an even darker one. So this is my main palette for this tutorial. And I will be using mostly these colors, but if I end up using another one, I will definitely let you know. So let's start. First thing I do is I sketch out my macaroons. So I want them to occupy the whole space basically that I have, and I'm going to map in where my macaroons are going to be. So I'm looking at my reference. I'm not drawing in the details, I'm just sketching in lightly. Also remember, food illustration is really awesome in a way that you can't get it wrong. So this is my macaroon that's on top. I'm measuring it out by eye basically, just to know where each part of it is. Take your time also drawing, so as to have a nice illustration. The drawing is essential. Sorry, I have to refocus my camera. So this is the first macaroon and it's resting on the second macaroon. Oh, also I forgot to add, the reference photo is from Pixabay, so you can find it in the description to this video. This is the second macaroon, it goes here, and here we already start with the berries. I see that this berry is as big as that. We have another one lying on its side here. Don't worry, we can always clean this up a bit after we're done. So this one is kind of moved a bit slightly to that side. So I love pastel pencils, especially on Mi Teintes paper, because, okay, you see that here I have a slight mistake in proportion. This needs to be larger. So on this paper, it's easy to erase things, so you don't have to worry about having made a mistake. On sanded papers, sometimes it's a bit more difficult, but you can always cover it over with other layers of pastel. So these are the leaves. I'm not trying to get them precisely, I'm just doing an approximation of the leaves, how I see them, just the shape. And let's add in another raspberry here. So we will ignore the macaroon in the back. So now there's the cream here. Let's finish up with the sketch. There's the cream here, and there's this edge over here. So I'm quite happy with the drawing. I can start adding pastels now. So the first thing that I will do, I will work on my raspberries, because if I get the lights into my raspberries, I won't be able to get them as dark as I need. So let's start with the raspberries, and let's start with the bottom ones, and then we can work on the top one as well. Or we can work on all of them at the same time, to be honest. Okay, so I'm just going to enlarge my reference photo. So what I'm doing is, I'm looking at my reference photo, and I'm going over the raspberries. Also, if you would like to see how to draw berries, you can check out my other video. I have it on my channel here on YouTube as well. So I'm just going over the raspberry carefully, not to go too much into the macaroon. So this is the first berry. I'm going to the second one, and I'm not applying a lot of pressure, just very gently passing over these. So here I see that there's a lighter part. I'm applying even less pressure. And also this raspberry here, applying less pressure where I see the color lighter. So our paper is going to work for us in the sense that it's going to add some lightness to our raspberries as the paper is light in itself. And then I'm going to do this berry here, just with my base color for the raspberry. And again, where it's lighter, I'm adding a lighter touch. And the raspberry here on top. So while working like this on all the berries at the same time, we will make sure that our berries are kind of the same, and avoid them looking different. If you do one berry at a time, sometimes you can end up making one berry look prettier than the rest of them, and it's gonna stand out too much, and that's something you don't want. So now I'm going in with my darks, and after that I will be adding the lights. So again, I start with this berry here, and I see that there is darkness closer to the bottom here, and I'm going away from the bottom and lightening the touch. So I see some darkness on these seeds here, and I'm applying pressure to one or the other side of pastel. I'm not applying pressure to the whole pastel at the same time. So I went a bit out of line here. I'm gonna just remove this. This is a kneaded eraser. You will see me using it in my other tutorials as well. And it picks up pastel wonderfully. So now I'm gonna add this dark color here and also this inside bit. So now they don't look much like raspberries at the moment still, but we're gonna get there. So this is done. Then I'm gonna add a darker shadow bit on this raspberry as well. And I'm looking that this part is a lot lighter compared to this raspberry, so the one on the right is lighter, so this is gonna help us distinguish between the shapes. And this raspberry has the darkness here. So the light is coming from this side, from the left, top left, and that's why the right sides are going to be in the shadow. So then we're applying the same thing here. Again, the right side is going to be more in the shadow. And this berry here too. There is a bit of shadow here, even though it's on the left side, but I see that it's a bit in the shadow here. It's darker. So lights and shadows is what is going to allow us to see the shape of things. And now I'm going to go in with an even darker one. This is a darker pastel. I'm going to apply it in the parts that I see darkest. Just slightly. Now you will see how our colors are going to mix. So now that I have this done, I can blend my colors a bit. So I'm not doing it very hard, just brushing off the pastel with my finger. So this is going to create a more solid look to my raspberries. And at the same time, it's going to give me more tooth of the paper to work with as I push the pastel into the paper. So here I see that I am lacking a bit of the red. I'm gonna add a bit more red, the base red color. And I'm doing the same here. And here I'm trying to go in the shape of the raspberry. So it's kind of this round shape. See that I'm lacking a bit of red here as well. I'm gonna add it. Okay, so if you don't have enough pastel on paper, always add it, and it's gonna help you blend things out. Because if you don't have enough pastel, you can see the paper showing through, like here, for example, but it's fine here because those are the highlights. And don't be afraid to dirty the paper. We can always clean that up. So I'm blending in this one as well. And you can see how already you kind of get the shape. I'm cleaning my hands, and now we will start to work on a more detailed part of the raspberry. So we are going to work on the lights. So I'm taking my first highlight is this color here. So first highlight color, and now I'm going to draw in the highlights that I see. Just at the tip of the pastel. And I see that there are these highlights on each and every seed. So, looking at the reference, just adding those seed highlights. So you can see, even though it's not very light, this color, it still looks a lot lighter compared to the red, and it creates that sense of highlight. So here we have another seed, this one here. You can also add these highlights with pencils, but it's not going to be the same. They won't give you as rich of a color as a soft pastel would. So I'm tapping it in slightly just to soften it up a bit. I don't want any harsh lines. And now I'm looking at what's happening on this side as well. Doesn't have to be perfectly identical to the raspberry that we have. So we have the lightest highlights in place. Now we switch to violet. I'm going to continue adding those highlights with the violet. These are the reflected lights of the seeds of the strawberry. So now I'm going to take my dull pink. I'm going to add a bit of definition into those highlights. Just in some places. And I'm going to use my brighter pink to add more color to the raspberry itself. Again, I'm moving in the direction of those seeds. So now with darker red, we're going to define some of those seeds better. And there's a shadow right under these highlights here. And I'm using the less dark red now to give a definition to some of these seeds now. And again with this dusty pink that I have, yes, this one, I'm gonna just add a bit those lightest highlights to each seed on the shadow side. So you can still see purple there, so we have them cooler. I'm going to pass with my purple over the top just to knock it back a bit. And here I've lost some of that darkness. So I'm gonna get it back. So now returning back to my initial highlights on my strawberry, I'm going to add a bit of yellows just to color it up a bit. Not everywhere, but to those brightest highlights on the light side. So one berry done. I see that there's more light on this side. It's catching a lot more light. Now let's continue with the other berries. And we missed a bit of this. Just going to give it more redness. Almost done. So one berry done. Let's continue with the others in the same way. So I have the darkest and the lightest parts on my berry now, and I'm gonna start with the highlights on the light side. There's a highlight on this darker bit also here. So I don't have to follow the shape of the berry identical. I don't need to make it photorealistic. I can just add those marks and make it less defined, because I want to pay closer attention to this raspberry and the macarons. So this one can be a bit less detailed. My reference photo went to sleep. Okay. So there we go. It's back. Now I'm going to my purples and adding those reflected lights on the shadow part of the raspberry. And now with the darker red, the one that we used for, not the very darkest, but the one that we used for darks, I'm going to separate these seeds just to create that texture of the raspberry. And we're gonna go even darker now with the darkest red. So not to lose the darkness here, just adding a tad of darker red overall to these deeper crevices in between the seeds. Gonna soften it out by using the red. And with my yellow, just a bit more highlights here, intensify them. And with the yellow, I'm gonna just put in those lightest highlights. Okay, there we go. And here I need to intensify this darkness, so we can also correct the shape that way of the strawberry. That's next to it. Okay, another strawberry done, raspberry done. So here we can start by adding those darker parts on the seeds. And I'm just going in this pattern of a raspberry, not following identical raspberry seeds that I see in the reference. So it's basically the other way around that we do it. And I'm adding the highlight onto my seeds lightly. And the violets onto the shadow parts. The yellows as the brightest highlights here. Remember, we're not going for photorealism. A bit of pink. And here I will add dark purple at the bottom of these raspberries, just to create that shadow on the table. Doesn't have to be very heavy, we're gonna make it light. So the shadow, I'm just blending it out. And you can see how it kind of grounds the raspberries. Here, let's make the edge. So we grounded our raspberries. Let's pass on to this one, the one we have here on the side. Just turn this a bit. Let's do the same thing. We can go from the darks and then to the lights. Looking at the reference photo again, not following the identical pattern that I see. So not photorealism, just an illustration. And now you can see where there are shadows, we're going to be adding our lights. I'm going to be using the pink. I'm just gently pushing it back a bit, just touching it with my fingers so it kind of goes back a bit. And I'm using the violet for those seeds that are in the shadow. And the light yellow to add those lightest highlights. Broke a piece off. You can actually use this. I think that's enough. So it does look like a raspberry now. Here I went a bit too far with the violets only. Let's knock them back a bit, because here you can still see those kind of areas that catch the light. And again, I'm using my violet to add that shadow underneath. And with a clean finger, just rubbing it out. There we go. So now we have the raspberries that are on the table ready, and we need to finish up with the one on the top. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Gonna create those seeds. You can go from light to dark or from dark to light, the way you like it, from highlights or from the shadows in between the seeds. Any way you prefer. Gonna go from the darks. Then I'm gonna take my pink and I'm gonna go where those shadows are and add those highlights. And remember where the light is coming from, so you know which parts are going to be lighter on the left. And here I'm going in with my purple, creating those shadow bits on the darker side. And with the yellow, I'm gonna add those very brightest highlights. Okay, so that's ready. I'm gonna clean my hands. It's okay that here we have a bit of dirt, we can always clean it up, don't worry. And now we're gonna start with the macaroons. If you want, you can clean up a bit the area around. For example, here, you can pick it up already. Just to keep it cleanish. You can see that here it's smudged a bit. We can always pick the pastel up and it doesn't ruin the paper. So now with the macaroons, I'm paying attention to where I have the cream and where I have the actual biscuit part. So with my light pink, I'm going to go and add that lighter part where I see the light. Here it goes into the cool one, into the cool light, because it's on the other side of the macaroon already, and it goes into the shadow. The same thing here. The part that catches the light is going to be warmer. And this bit is already cool, because if you've lost your drawing, you can always get it back. There we go. So I'm gonna make it cooler, this part, because we have the reflected light on this macaroon. It doesn't catch the light, it's in the shadow. Here we have this lighter part in the shadow, and here we're using the warmer light again. And here where it kind of folds backwards, we're adding the cool again. And now we can go into our darker pinks, and I'm adding it where I see the darker areas here. And also just a tiny bit here. Then there is a shadowy part over here, and because of this raspberry we have a shadow also here at the bottom part of our macaroon. Okay, now we're gonna create those holes on the edge. And again, my photo went to sleep. Hello. And there's also the darker shadow part on this macaroon underneath here. Like that. And now we're going to darken it up even more with the purple. There's the cast shadow from the leaf. And then we will be going even more darker. Just create the bend here. So with a clean finger, I'm just gently rubbing it, trying not to move it very much. I'm going the same way here. Don't worry if you've gone out of the line here. You can always fix it with the kneaded eraser. So I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and fix a bit the edges here. Just a bit to remove that pastel that I don't need. And fix the shape a bit, because I see that there is a sharper wedge here than on my drawing. Now I'm gonna add a bit of red, the dark red that we used for the raspberries, just in the shadows. And slightly blend it in, creating those whole texture here. With the violet, I'm gonna add that line that separates the biscuit, the smooth side, from the this part with the holes. and this line gets the separation line gets darker on this side. So I'm using my dark red. And on the smooth side, I'm blending it out into my pinks. Okay, so this biscuit is quite good. There's also a bit of a cast shadow under this leaf. We will be working on them shortly. Okay, so now I see that there is this dark part inside. Where the cream ends, and I'm gonna add this red also to the shadow of the cream, as our macaroon is going to give a reflected light on it. So now I'm gonna add those details of holes, again just with the side of my pastel. And with the violet, I'm gonna add the line that I see here that separates the two sides. And we're gonna intensify this shadow here. But pay attention that this shape shadow of this macaroon, it's lighter than the cast shadow that it casts onto the other macaroon. So here we will be using purple instead. And I'm going to use a very light yellow here, just for that highlighted edge. And also add it in some places here. With a clean finger, I'm gonna add that highlight. And a bit of a shadow underneath on the cream. So here we're adding again the red on top and the violet under the first macaroon. As it's a cast shadow, it's going to be darker. So pay attention, I'm not using black here. I'm using violet to create the deepest. Darkest tone. Oh, got into it with my yellow. So be careful, you can avoid muddy look if you do not drag your lights into your darks. So when you mix two pastels that are very far from each other in tonality wise, they will create kind of a muddy feel. Cleaning it up. And here we have also this shadow from the raspberries, correcting the shape. And we're gonna add those holes on this part of the biscuit, and a bit more shadow here on this side. And here we can see that there is the darkness. We can kind of see the cream, but it's quite dark, this part underneath the biscuit. And also this part is in the shadow. Just gonna add more red here, make it darker. So now I'm gonna clean my hands and add some purples into here, just to cool it off a bit. I'm gonna add a bit of highlight here that catches light. This is the crumbly part that we have here, where the tiny holes appear. And also this edge kind of catches light. And with the dark red again, I'm just gonna create that appearance of the shape of the macaron. Okay, so now that we have this dark enough, we can continue with the cream with clean hands. I'm using my pale yellow that I've used already in my raspberries, and I'm creating the cream. One, and here I'm just adding very slightly, just give a hint of that cream because it's in the shadows. And with a violet, I'm going to create a shadow on my cream, and it's going to mix in with that dark red and create a beautiful shadow. Just gonna blend it in slightly. And here we can stretch it all the way into the cream. To give it the shadow. So it's going to be redder, the shadow. Bit more dots in the texture here. Now I'm gonna clean it up with my knead eraser. There we go. Looks a lot better now. And we're going to be adding leaves to our raspberries. So I'm going to use my medium value green, and the leaves are going to be the least detailed on our sweet. I'm not even going to blend them. That's one leaf, and there's another one here. There we go. I'm gonna need my eraser a bit. I'm gonna remove this dirt that I have this redness around here, just to clean it up a bit. So now with a lighter green, I'm going to add some highlights onto my leaf. The same way, just a bit slightly here. And with a darker green, I'm adding shadow parts and using my very dark green, just adding some more definition. I'm just gonna go back to my yellow and add those lighter parts in the leaves of mint. And now a bit of purple for the shadow. And a bit of purple for the shadow on the macaroon as well. And there we go. Our macaroons are all ready. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you would like to see some other food stuff, let me know. And as I said, the reference photo for this is on Pixabay, so you can always get it there. I'm just gonna add just a tad more light here just to create that shape. And also here. And that's it. So our macaroons are all ready. I hope you liked this tutorial, so give it a like on YouTube. And as I'm looking at it, I'm seeing more and more things that I could correct, but to be honest, I could go on and on correcting these things, just adding a bit more light in between the shadows here. But yeah, I would also love to see your macaroons, so you can post them on Instagram and tag me. I would like to see that. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this very educational and interesting, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks. See you in the next video. Bye.